Here we are. Good evening, everyone. Hey, it's Gina with Transformative Healing, and welcome to tonight's live. Tonight we have a special guest, and Jeremiah is one of our special guests this evening. So welcome to our live.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So let me just kind of give you a background if you're new to what we do here. So let me just kind of give you a background of why we do what we do. Jeremiah and I are both childhood trauma survivors. And so we do this to bring awareness, to let people know that there are other healing modalities that go along with traditional talk therapy, coaching, and things like that. We like to bring truth. We like to bring education, neuroscience, different healing modalities. We like to think outside the box. And so we started doing these so other trauma survivors, family members, mental health professionals, whoever it is out in the world, can have an idea of what's needed to help a trauma survivor on their healing journey, but most importantly, to welcome you into our life. What is it like for a trauma survivor? What are the things that we go through? What are the things, the challenges, just different things like that. And so I am so honored to have Jeremiah, and this is why. So many men are always, I guess, told, and when they grow up, to not talk about their emotions, their feelings, they're always told to hush. And so I'm so honored to have him because, you know, he's bringing such a story of heartache, but he's doing it in a way that you're going to see the empowering and the inspiration behind his journey and where he is today. We all struggle. We all go through so many things. And so the story that he's going to tell us this evening is his own story, his own journey from being a child to where he is as an adult today. And some of the aspects of his journey are going to be very triggering. There may be some words that he says. And unfortunately for trauma survivors, like Jeremiah and I were just talking about, we go into autopilot, which is basically we just start talking and talking and talking. And we just start blurbing out words and in our story. And although we try to keep it PG and G around here, sometimes that's not always the case. And I totally understand. So with that being said, if part of the story becomes triggering to you, and triggering is like the dysregulation that we talked about with Alyssa. If you start feeling nervous, if you start feeling anxious, if you start feeling nauseated, heart palpitations, heart rate increase, you start feeling, Jeremiah, you can chime in at any time too, feel free.
No, I'm glad that you're bringing this up because that's kind of where I wanted to start too, is with the self-care piece.
Yes, please.
And I'm gonna, and like Gina was saying, sometimes if we have identity wrapped into our story, which we all do, especially as trauma survivors, there's a lot of our identity that is built into the things that have happened to us. And we run that story in our minds. And sometimes when we get into sharing the story, it just kind of turns on. We can get kind of activated. Like Gina's saying, you feel your heart rate go up. And then it's almost like a possession, I guess. I don't know, for lack of a better term. And it kind of turns on autopilot. I'm going to try to not do that with my story. And I am going to try to we get into the details, right? Because we want other people to experience what we experienced in these moments. Like, we just really want validation in that. We want people to understand. And sometimes we overshare. And for people who might not even be consciously aware of some of the things that happen to them or how it has affected them, it can be activating, it can be triggering. So as I'm sharing my story, like, keep your self-care in mind. If something makes you feel upset or even just a little bit off, if you have to step out or anything like that, like, that's the priority here, is to make sure that you kind of keep yourself safe, feeling comfortable, because some of the things I'm going to share I have an ACEs score of 8. And for anybody who's familiar with the ACEs score thing, that's like 8 out of 10. So if that kind of lets you know some of the stuff I'm going to be sharing, just kind of like disclaimer, I wanted to make sure we were out there. So I'm glad that Gina brought that up.
Yes. And I just also want to add too that if you are struggling and you do need help, you can also put something in the chat. Jeremiah and I both have some practices that we can go over something real quick if something does become too triggering. So feel free to reach out. Feel free to put any questions in the chat that you may have for Jeremiah or myself, and or anything like that. But again, just kind of reiterating, if you do feel dysregulation or anything like that, take a step back. Maybe shut off the live, take a few minutes to kind of compose yourself, and then come back, or just wait and watch it when it goes on YouTube here in just a little while. You're more than welcome to watch it. You can fast forward or whatever you do. But most importantly, what's most important to us is obviously sharing our story, but making sure our audience stays regulated and things like that too. So with that being said, so what we're going to do is we're going to kind of transition, and Jeremiah is going to tell us a little bit about himself transitioning into his story, into his journey. So I'm just going to let you take the lead.
And I'm just going to do this chronologically if we can, and just start at the beginning and try to bring us up to where I am now.
Sure.
And I want to also honor our time. So in that autopilot thing that I was talking about, if it starts looking like I don't want to derail things, and I want to try to honor everybody's time, but I also feel like I have just a lot of pieces for the last 5 decades of my life. So yeah, I'm just going to jump right in, and I'm going to start with the childhood piece.
Yes.
So my biological mother was, she had problems with drugs. She hung out with violent crowds. I've heard stories from my biological grandmother of me at 3 years old answering the phone saying, "What'll it be, weed or speed?" So try to paint a picture around that. So, and my biological mother, biological father were not together when I was young like that. And again, I'm going to try to PG this thing for everybody. So, and speaking of regulation, like this is one of my things too. If I start to feel, like I already feel a little bit spun up, just to be transparent with everybody.
Yes.
It's a very emotional kind of mindset that we're getting into. So regulation tools, we can talk about that later.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you need to take a deep breath and just relax for a minute, go ahead. I know sharing our story brings up a lot. I know I can tell by looking at you, you are very amped up, and that happens to me too. If you need to take a minute, take a minute.
Yeah. No, I want to make sure I keep it slow because I know the story. And that's the other thing about the autopilot piece. Once we get in there, we just try to run it. And I don't want to be sitting here talking top speed while everybody thinking we're on 2x or anything. So
absolutely.
And I'll just try to bullet point the major stuff.
Okay.
So as a young child, I was sexually abused by my biological mother's boyfriend. And when she found out about that, she solved the problem very violently by her own hand while I was present in the home. And again, I'm gonna try to choose my words here. So I have images, like some of my earliest memories are that whole experience with the police taking her away, which I feel like was more traumatic to me than what had led to that. So, and again, I just want to try to bullet point this stuff. So, and for the ACEs score, like this is where things start ticking off, and there were already like major ticks in the boxes at that young age. After that point, I went to live with my father and who I refer to as my mom, who was technically my stepmother, but they got married when I was 4, shortly after all of this happened, and she raised me. So if I ever say my mom, I'm referring to my stepmother because she raised me like I was her own, and I always just called her mom anyway. And that portion of my childhood after that stuff, behavioral issues, a lot of trouble in school, physical abuse in the sense that like when I was young, I was disciplined with a belt, which for that time and era was like, that's just the thing that you do. We understand now, especially with this trauma lens, how that affects things. But other than that, like it was just a much more peacefully, like a more growth conducive environment than where I had originally come from. But the behavioral problems. And so I was diagnosed with ADD at the time, or hyperactive. I can't remember what hyperactive disorder. They put me on Ritalin. This was before the ADH thing. Like we're talking like 1978,
Hmm.
right? So, so put on Ritalin to correct the behavior, and just, I guess what I'm trying to say with all that is like none of it was addressed, right? It was like all of this stuff happened, and there were other incidences too. Um, like one of my earliest memories is just not being able to wake my biological mother up because she had overdosed in a very young age. We lived next door to an appliance store or something, real close to it, and I remember, like I say, early memories. I couldn't wake her up, and whatever that does to a child, and ran next door to this department store or appliance place for help. So,
Hmm.
so you have all of this, and now I'm in this environment with a father, a mother. Everything's normal, okay, um, but it wasn't addressed. I don't remember therapy. I don't remember, like, it was just kind of like, okay, this happened. Everything's gonna be okay. Let's just move forward. And because I guess that was what they knew, or that was, I don't know. I guess we know why, but that doesn't help with the developmental issues. It doesn't help with the behavioral issues. It doesn't help address the off balance between like the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala, and the imbalance in all of those things. It doesn't address that, which leads to behavior issues. So my school age years were always being sent to the principal's office, always being sent out to the hall, being the class clown, the attention seeking from attention that wasn't given. And again, too, I want to speak to this just real quick. Acute and chronic developmental traumas are not just the things that happen to you. They are, but they're not just the things that happen to you. They are also the things that do not happen for you. Being co-regulated when you're young, having direct affirmation and attention, feeling cared for and attended to, and just made to feel like you exist, like all that stuff has to happen. Like it's critical. And it's not necessarily like an outwardly abuse, but it's neglect. You know what I mean? So anyway, moving
Can
forward.
I ask you? Can I ask you a question?
Yes, absolutely.
Just so, how many years did your mom get, if you don't mind sharing?
My
Your
so
biological mother.
I'm not sure how many years she served. I do know.
Okay.
So when my father got custody of me, my my matriarchal grand my matriarchal great grandfather, so my biological mother's grandfather,
Okay.
essentially had that whole side of my family, and they're all wonderful people. I love them to death, but ACEs scores in that whole, like the
Hmm.
generational stuff. Okay, a lot of abuse with, especially with the women, a lot of sexual abuse. Just so he was wise enough to have that part of the family pretty much leave me alone, especially at that young age. So I kind of was able to grow up with my mom and dad. Again, my
Okay.
stepmom, but straight just my mom and dad.
Yep.
And I knew about my biological mother. I remembered going to visit her one time when I was like 7.
Okay.
So something happened, and I don't know these details because her and I, even after we came back together years later, we didn't discuss it until just last year, which I'll get to. But I didn't get the details. She had something turned over in her conviction because of the nature of what had transpired.
Yes.
So, like I say, I remember at like 7 years old or maybe 8 years old, I was able to go visit her at,
Okay.
at my grandmother's house or something like that. But that was like the only contact that her and I had until I was in prison,
Okay.
which if I can,
We'll get there. Yep. We'll
yeah,
get
I hope so. Like I
there.
say,
Yes.
I really want to try to honor the time. So,
Yes.
um, so just so through the school years, like I say, a lot of behavioral problems, fights, um, and I just I feel our nervous systems, especially as children and in developmental stages and stuff, they kind of pick up on things. And I feel like there was so much damage done to me when because I was malnourished, I was small, there's all this other stuff, which I think in school led to, like, I was kind of a target for a while. And it turned into like especially getting into like junior high. Junior high, I spent, almost my entire 7th grade year in school suspension for fighting. And a lot of the time, and I'm just not the type of person to want to start. I just never have been, but I've always been on the receiving end of it. So there's just that piece, right? So when children experience these things, and this is part of what led me into getting into this adolescent space and the Always Takes a Village Institute with the Certified Adolescent Trauma Support Specialist designation. And then I'm actually taking the supervisor training as well. Because I want to be able to get into spaces where I can help build awareness with teachers, administrators like this. We need this trauma lens, man. The whole world needs this trauma lens. It really does. So in school, I just feel like that was part of it. It's something that we see in retrospect. I just had a lot of trouble. Into high school, not so much. The end of my junior high career, there were a couple of violent outbursts that I had that kind of, then everybody started to leave me alone. It had gone so far as to stealing a scratch owl from shop class. And anyway, there's just a whole lot there. I'm trying to stay away from the details.
No, you're all right.
Into high school, I just kind of switched into this mindset of being able to navigate all of the social groups. I didn't have a clique. I mean, I was kind of, I don't know if it was anything like in that kind of stoner vibe, but at the same time, I got along with everybody. And I think that was just some sort of natural skill set that I developed through all of the trauma that led me to that point. Being in that kind of stoner vibe leads to getting out of high school. So now there's drug addiction, there's alcohol addiction, there's that whole behavioral sphere, and then spending the majority of my time unconscious, stoned, drunk, all of the things. Now there's more behavioral issues. Now there's more violence. Like the stuff just kind of keeps repeating itself. My mom and dad. So I had a half sister who was born when I was 8 years old, who, again, our family psychodynamic was like, there was no halves, steps. It was my mom, my dad, and my sister. And like, that's just how we did things. And to speak on the family unit, again, like I said, like the physical abuse was pretty much just the belt for correction. I mean, eating the bar of soap and like all the stuff that was normal back then. That's, it's not the kind of thing we do to our kids now. But like I say, yeah, I had to eat.
Some people probably do.
And yeah, I had to eat soap, but the major stuff wasn't there. But there was. So here's this piece, right? There was, and these are some of the phrases that they're still in my head, and they're part of my limiting beliefs to this day. Is, like, what are you, boy, stupid? What's wrong with you? Okay. And look, to no fault of my father, right? Because that's we just run that up the ladder, and I believe for each of us, our parents did the best they could with what they knew and where they were. So, but there was a lot of that. So, and plus with the being malnourished, I was always super skinny. I was always super small. So there was just a lot of, I wasn't always malnourished. Coming out of that, the first 4 years into that, there was just a lot of getting picked on. There was just all those pieces, right? That just really, they make it hard for you to like step into yourself and to, the confidence, the lack of self-esteem, the limiting beliefs, and it creates all these challenges and all these blocks and all these barriers, which trying to understand these barriers is also something that got me into this space in the first place, which hopefully we'll have time to get there.
We will take your time. I just, I just wanted to lighten up just a second, because my husband said, I had a cousin that told his mom he loved the taste of lemon joy dish soap.
If the smell, and I wasn't fortunate enough to get like the smelly, like the liquid stuff. It was like bite the bar of soap. And I don't even remember what it was.
Usually it was probably like Irish Spring.
yeah, or some kind of lye soap or something. It was
Yeah.
brutal.
Yeah. Yes, yes,
And
yes.
not just bite it, like you need to bite a piece off, chew it up a
Get it
little
all in
bit.
your
Like
get
we're
it
gonna
all in
make,
your teeth.
yeah, yeah.
I get
We're
it.
gonna make sure.
Yes,
So
yes.
lemon joy dish. So I think, yeah, maybe the fragrance kind of helps soften the
Yep.
blow a little bit.
Well, I gotta tell you this funny story because my son's 19, but I don't know, he was little and he used to be a wisecracker, like, oh man, my husband and I, and he used to drive us bananas, love him to pieces, but come to find out he had Asperger's, and that explained so much for us. But we
Mm.
used to give him alum. And it's I don't even know. I don't even my husband could probably say what it is, but alum is like this weird spice. I don't even know, but he liked it. He's like, I really like that. I said, kid,
It's
you
like
are
super
whack.
bitter and it's
Yeah.
like super
Yeah.
bitter and kind of spiky and like, yeah, yeah. And
He
he was
liked
all
it.
about it,
It's
huh?
like, no, no. So yeah, so I guess yeah. Oh, yep, it's bitter. I guess oh, he said it's for
Yeah,
pickles, but yeah, it was I was
yeah,
like, oh my goodness. But yeah, I was just like this kid, I understand because going back, not knowing,
right.
we tried doing things like your mouth is this way, your mouth, we're gonna try. And nope, nope. And when he ever said, I actually like the taste of that, I'm like, oh dear golly. So, but what I mean, but once we found out what was wrong with him, it made sense. So
Yeah,
I'm sure like in the same thing with you. So we'll get there, but it does. So really
yeah.
does make sense.
Well, we make a huge shift coming along this path and through this education and gaining this lens and understanding. Like it really, like you can sit and look back and retrospectively, just like I get it now. Like you
Mhm.
can't see it when you're in it, especially when it's your own behavior, especially with like the
Right.
alcohol and the drug addiction and the violence. For me, violence was a thing. And to sit here and say that, like that feels so incredibly foreign to me because I'm like
Right.
one of the most passive people, but I wasn't. And again,
Right.
that was my autonomic nervous system and these behavioral patterns and all this stuff that just runs on autopilot when that prefrontal cortex goes offline and everything else takes over. It's just it is what it is. And when you're to get to kind of where we were, when you're intoxicated all the time, and it wasn't like, hey, let's drink. I got to the point it was like, and just to honor your audience, just to be a little bit
No, you're right.
illicit, like I'd be drinking Jim Beam out of the fifth, like whatever, like just straight out of the fifth. I wore Jinkos, so if I'm gonna date myself a little bit and kind of paint a picture of my tribe, right? So I wore Jinkos, and the great thing about Jinkos was you could put a fifth of Jim Beam in the back pocket of your Jinkos, and it would go all the way in the pocket, right? But anyway, so so yeah, so there'd be drinking, there'd be pills of whatever, meth. A lot of times, more like I did the rails.
Yep.
I never did needles, so I like that. That was one of my justifications, right? I never did heroin. I never did needles, and that's some kind of like that means something. Which I whatever. I was already all the way off the rails. What difference would it have made? I guess,
Right.
but at the same time, what I'm trying to say is there was just so much trying to fill that void, trying to fill that hole, and or trying to just because we don't understand why we feel like we feel. We don't
Right.
understand why we're doing the things that we're doing. So when you find that piece that kind of can paint over it or make you forget about it, like I dove headlong into that stuff, right? Um, which led to again trying to keep things moving. So I'm living in a space at that point where like I'm working, but we're partying all the time. I'm at work drunk. I'm at work stoned. I'm at work high. I'm at work all these things. It was just like that was the life and that's what I was living. And at the time, so to get to the prison thing, I guess is the next piece I'm trying to get to. And again, I'm just trying to display these behaviors and bring awareness to the fact that all this stuff was so incredibly unconscious, right? Like we just when we don't take ownership and when we don't do what we can to try to understand why we're doing these things and we're just riding that train, it's just this full speed ahead, unconscious. Anyway, at that stage, so my sister, at the time was 15. And I had moved away from my hometown. It was a little over an hour. And she had a friend who could drive. So they'd come visit every once in a while and hang out. And I was the not the best influence, because at the time I'm in the mindset of all this stuff is cool. So yeah, she partied with us a little bit and stuff like that. And again, I'm in this mindset of like, we would go to parties just with the intention of like, we're going to go start some shit. But anyway, so I land myself in prison, and this is what happened. And this is a story that, this one gets me. So,
Take your time.
so I was convicted in night, and I'm going to use the language here just to kind of be a little bit specific. I am trying to G this down, but there's something
You're
about
okay.
the language that plays a role in my future here. I was convicted of assault with intent to murder. Okay, so when you read that string of words, but you know me, there's nothing about that string of words that is healing, that is caring, that is compassionate. Right. So, and that was 1998, the conviction itself. But what had happened was, and this is not in the paperwork, and this is, I've just kind of gotten into being able to share this outside of like with my wife and stuff like that. So, and Dr. J and our adolescent crew, like this is one of the first places where I was able to crack this open. It was a beautifully painful experience for me, but it was very healing. So the gentleman, the guy that I ended up attacking, had sexually assaulted my sister when she was 15 years old. And when she told me that, I was already under the influence of multiple substances and already in a mind space of just violence anyway. So it was an act of retribution. There's a part of me that feels really bad about what had happened to this guy, but at the same time, like, to be really honest with everybody, like, you touched my sister, so it's. I guess I'm just glad that he didn't die. And again, that might be a little.
Right.
I'm
Nope.
just. So that's what lands me in prison. I guess I'm just trying to paint this, because it's like all this stuff, and I feel again like this. We get in this vibe, especially if we get in this vibe of just this destructive behavior and all this stuff, and that's kind of what we send out, and that's kind of what shows up in our life, and the people that are in our circle can get kind of wrapped up into that too. And I found out later that wasn't the first time something like that had happened to my sister, but she hadn't told me because she knew. And this is stuff that her and I worked out afterwards. So, and this is a huge piece of future parts of my story as well. My sister. So yeah, again, to try to honor time. So now I'm in prison, right? Sentenced to 7 to 21 with a maximum of up to life. And now I'm sober for the first time in, well, not even at first, like the first couple of years, not so much, because you can get anything in there. You can get out here if you know the right people. And I could talk for hours about that whole chapter of my life. But anyway, I actually, so there's nothing within the Michigan Department of Corrections really that is put in place to help you get your mind right. There's AA, there's NA, there's some of those programs in place. When I was in the camp system a couple of years before I came home, I actually lobbied with the warden to bring in Emotions Anonymous, which is a similar, I mean, it's based on the same principles, but it's all about emotions. And I was actually able to spend time with other inmates working on that kind of piece of our lives together. And that's kind of what I'm trying to get to. Like, so there's this big shift that happens in prison from running full speed ahead unconscious to realizing like, this is not what I want my life to be. This is not, I need to understand why I was doing this stuff. So, and now it changes your vibe, right? And now the people that start coming into your circle are a little bit different. And even though I was incarcerated, I met some of the most altruistic human beings I've ever known in my existence while I was in prison. Murderers, thieves, physically violent criminals, like, but all like just on a different kind of mindset when you get in there and of your own accord, not due to the MDOC practices and policies, of your own accord decide, I need to work on this personal development thing. I need to figure out this transformational development thing. I need to understand. So it sent me on a deep dive into religion. So I read everything from the Satanic Bible. I read Anton LaVey. I read all the way up through Buddhism, the Be Here Now space, the Quran, into Christianity and the Bible, and just like I just needed to understand as much as I could, and it also led me into cognitive behavioral therapy, neuro-linguistic programming. I read a lot of Carl Jung, so I'm in this space of being sober and trying to heal. And unfortunately, I never landed on this trauma thing, right? Like, how powerful would that have been in that space?
Mm-hmm.
But at least what happened there made enough of a shift that when I did come home, the drinking, the alcohol, all the drinking, the drugs, all that stuff, I did drink a little bit up to a certain point, but I quit in 2005. I came home in 2003. So on that 7 to 21, because of good behavior, because of participating in, they had an assaultive offenders therapy program, which was contracted from outside the prison. I went through that twice, and that's where the cognitive behavioral therapy, and that's when you start like owning your own stuff, right? And even with this trauma stuff, like if you get to that space where like we have to stop blaming our parents, we have to stop blaming the world, we have to stop blaming. Did they do us wrong? Yes. Did they do us harm? Absolutely. If you can find the space to forgive them and start working on yourself, like that's
huge.
That's where we start to move forward. And I guess this is what I want to try to lean us into.
Can I stop you for just a second?
Yes,
Lori,
please do.
Lori has a question. From
I've got the comments turned off. I'm sorry.
Oh, do you? Oh, that's all right. No,
just to
that's
keep
all right.
myself from.
Yep, I figured that's all right. So she asked, what is a coping mechanism that you use when you have tough days?
Right now, my wife, oh my God, she has saved my life. And her capacity and her ability to just naturally co-regulate and hold space and just accept. So that's one of my huge coping strategies. I also, so self-care, and this is a huge piece, and this looks different for everybody. I have motorcycles. I am, so if I'm spinning out, if I can't get it, if I'm in that space that Lori's asking about, there's things that I can do. And if Jamie is not available for me to just go be with, the motorcycle thing is huge, either wrenching on them or riding them or something in that space. Like we have to have something that we connect to that helps us feel like ourself. Helps us feel a little bit free. Coping strategies in the moment. Again, this thing, and this is there's somatics and stuff connected to this, and I'm only educated in the somatic space just a little bit. It's something that I want to learn more about. But tough days, being aware that we're activated and being aware that we are not functioning up here and giving some space to that, whatever that looks like for us, taking a bath, taking a shower, going outside and standing in the grass barefooted, the grounding thing. And there's a whole huge piece on that. There's just, but those are just some of the things for me, but the motorcycles are huge. If I can just jump on and go for a ride and forget about what's going on, like that's pretty good for me.
Yes.
That's a good question. Did that answer your question? Okay, Lori. I feel like we could have a whole conversation around all of that too.
Oh yeah, good old self-care and absolutely coping and coping mechanisms, self-care, all that, they all go hand in hand.
Yeah, Absolutely.
Yes. Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. And forgive me, everybody. I turned the chat off because it was kind of messing with me a little
So
bit. So
some people can't do it. Uh, so yeah, it's um sometimes like my ADD will kick in and like I'll look and then but I am, I do look at all of my guests and then I was like, but I do because I'm the one that monitors. My husband's a moderator, but I'm the one that obviously is here. I got to look at the questions and all that. So I'm like, it's okay. So I get it. Some people don't like them on.
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
then you'll be looking at the chat and not be able to tell us your journey.
Yeah, and not be able to stay on task. And again,
Yeah.
I'm trying to make this as concise as I can, so I'm going
No,
to jump
you.
ahead a little bit.
Yep.
Uh, but the healing journey started in prison, and it started with personal development, transformational development, that kind of space, and then understanding psychology, which led to some developmental psychology. Um, yeah, there's just so much. I don't know that I can squeeze it all in, but so I got married my first wife and I were married in 2005. My stepson was, when her and I got together, he was like 2. So now I'm a parent. So there's a huge parenting piece that I want to mention in all this too, because we realize now that I'm responsible for raising this child, even though he's not mine, I still took my responsibility very seriously, which leads into trying to learn about parenting, right? Because as parents, we do what our parents did that we liked, or we
Mhm.
don't do what our parents did that we don't like. And we try to do our best with that, but even looking back now, like, I did okay, but there's still things that I did that I wish I hadn't. And he and I have a great relationship, and we've actually talked about this stuff, like, because he's very affirming, and you did a great job and all this stuff, but we've had conversations like, hey man, what did I do wrong? Like, how did I mess you up? Because he has a child now, our first grandchild, and like, I want to build that awareness in him, right? So there's the whole being a parent, I guess, is another huge piece of the healing journey. uh
Is I actually, sorry to interrupt you, but
no, 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 you're fine.
that's a huge thing. So last week, I didn't have a guest, and it just maybe it was God. I don't even know. I'm assuming, but I walked in the house and I said to my daughter, "Would you like to be a guest on my YouTube tonight?" And she's like, "What?" And she's like, yeah, well, like how?" And I said, "Well, I got the perfect topic." And she said, "What?" I said, "Living with a trauma survivor. What is it like for you as a child to grow up with a trauma survivor?" And
Oh,
she said, "I don't know if I want to do that." And I said, "Why?" And she said, "Because I'm afraid I'll hurt your feelings." And I said, "No,
no.
what I want is exactly what you're doing is I want people to see what it's like for children to grow up with us and how I don't really want to say mess them up, but how we may have maybe messed them up a little bit.
It's
Um,
that intent versus impact piece.
yeah,
Like, we may have
yeah,
intended the best, but what kind of impact did I
yep,
have despite what I thought I was doing? What did it
yep,
actually do to and for
yep.
you? Yeah, that's brilliant.
Yes. Yes. And then living with me during my times of being unhealed to
Mm,
how has life been for you the last 3 years since I've been on this healing journey. And so it was really amazing to hear her. And she's like, "I don't want to hurt your feelings." I'm like, "You just tell the truth. I'll just ding you later." No. But yeah, so we recorded that last Monday and it was really it was wonderful for just listening to it. So it's the same thing that what you're doing.
yeah.
And, asking, what did I do? And, going into being a parent without even really, I guess, being a parent because we don't have, there's no book. And then going on what we were taught, it's like, oh, and then we think it's right. And so for you coming out of prison and then getting married, and then all of a sudden you have an instant family, it's like, wait a minute, like, what is this?
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
hard.
Well, and intentionally dove into parenting books, and like, so we are where we are now, and we know what we know now, and we have what we know. I'm sorry, we are where we are, and we have what we have based on what we know now.
Right.
At any stage in our life, if we want things to be different, we have to learn. You have to learn something different. You have to be around different people. You have to be in the mindset of change, or you're just going to keep running the same patterns. So yeah, being in that parent space and wanting to do the best I could, like, I knew I had to educate myself. So there was a lot around all that. And like I say, I really want to try to honor our time. So I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. Um, And okay, so now I'm gonna touch some of the pain pieces again, real quick, just to kind of give everybody a little second, because this one I know is heavy for a lot of people, and this actually impacts a lot of people also. And I'm not going to share all of the losses. I'm going to stick to the ones that are like most related to my story and where I am now. But just know that there's more than what I have time to cover here. Um, okay, so in 2012, my father took his own life, which changes. And if anybody's
Oh,
experienced this, or even to the second degree, been exposed to somebody who, this changes everything, right? And this is what I know now. um so I ended up after that just like doing the best I could, but everything in life just didn't fit anymore. And I ended up, my first wife and I divorced. We parted on good terms, if there is such a thing. She was very compassionate and very understanding of, I guess at that point it was just like I didn't even understand what was going on with me. I understand now it was like some very serious unresolved grief and unprocessed grief around that trauma, which led to, like I say, I just kind of blew my whole life up, and then was just in this really dark space. And and in that space is where I met my wife now, Jamie, who, like I say, if anything saved my life from all of that. And I could talk probably way too long about all of that too, but I want to try to keep this moving. So with 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 my father taking his own life, everything in my family dynamic changed, and it did terrible things to my sister, who I didn't understand at the time, but I understand now was already carrying all this other stuff,
right.
right? And just not knowing how to deal with it and not knowing how to cope with it. And she ended up having, she worked her way all the way up to a full blown heroin addiction, which we try to, and so now it's my mom and I and her, and I have 5 nephews now. At that point, when a lot of that stuff started, it was just my 2 oldest nephews. There are 5 of them now. Um, but the whole struggle through that was trying to get her into rehab and not knowing how to help her, and nobody tells us about this trauma. Nobody tells us about why you can't just think your way out of behaviors or just motivate yourself. And like it's so much deeper than that, right? And but in all the spaces that we were in trying to get her help, even nobody
Mhm.
mentions that stuff. Nobody talks about it. It's just not there. This is what we need to build awareness around. So, and there's a lot of stuff around all that. Okay. And then at some stage, being here with Jamie, so I have 4 stepchildren. Logan, who is my stepson from my first marriage. And then when Jamie and I were married, she has 3 children: Kylie, Jacob, and Macy. Kylie's the oldest, Jacob's middle. He's actually the same age as Logan. They're adult children. And then Macy is 15, who was 5 when we got together. So there's been the whole parenting thing of being a man trying to parent a girl. And like, again, I've educated myself, and that's something I want to keep pointing out. Like, if you're in a space and you don't have the answers, the information's out there. It's kind of your responsibility. But anyway, I
Right.
feel like I'm getting sidetracked. So
Nope.
as we build our life here, and I start to realize I can put up boundaries and I can keep us safe and try to stay away from the toxicity and the drama, and just trying to just create a peaceful existence for us here. And I start putting up boundaries. I kind of start dissociating a little bit from my mom and my sister, because to no fault of their own, again, this is just how things worked out. They're just kind of toxic, and they're carrying around unresolved grief, just like I was. There's still parts of that I know I haven't put away, even though I've consciously worked on it. So moving forward, and doing my best for my nephews and trying to be there the best I can, but they're in such just this painfully toxic environment, right? With drug addiction and violence, and just their ACEs scores. If mine are 8, if mine's an 8, theirs are 8s, 9s.
Ooh.
It's just a lot. Okay. So I start to distance myself. I'm trying to protect us here. My mom, my stepmother, but my mom ends up in 2019 passing away from cancer. And I was able to be there and help care for her. And anybody who's been in that space knows that that takes a lot out of you. And it also can, it can also help shift your perspective around, like, I think gratitude is my superpower. That's a whole, I can do a whole workshop on that. But anyway, um, so in 2019, she ends up passing away. And then, okay. And then like a month after that, so my sister also took her own life intentionally with
Oh,
an intentional drug overdose, because that was her only way out, right, for her. And this is after being
mhm,
removed from her, being removed from having custody or having access to the boys, and um, mental institution stay, and just,
right.
and so now I'm in a position of being the patriarch of the family, and I'm trying to help with my nephews, and I'm realizing, so my second oldest nephew, um, between the ages of when he was around 12 and 13, so not too long ago, also attempted to take his own life. He's still here, and I'm trying to paint all of that picture just to help people understand. Like, so I'm in this space, and I'm trying to help, and I can't. Right? You can't. I'm not equipped. I don't have the knowledge. This is before even understanding how the trauma has stacked. Like,
Right.
this is before the awareness around any of that ever came. And not being able to find help for them. And so to fast forward just a little, and this is a piece that's always been a part of me, is I've always been helpful to people once I came home from prison. Always tried to be in a space where I can help, always been able to connect with people. And it's just this, it's the experiential piece that you don't get from reading books and taking classes. It's like, this is what life has taught me, and I'm able to use that to connect. And now, so I'm in this, we're 2019, 2000, we're in this space. Like, I want to help people. Like, at this point, I switched into, I switched careers. I was a motorcycle mechanic at that point, working at a little Honda shop. It was just a small mom and pop shop. It's a beautiful place. It was more like working in a garage on motorcycles with your best friend, listening to heavy metal, than it was like a job. But anyway, I was in that space, but I wasn't feeling fulfilled. I liked what I was doing. I loved where I was. I loved the people I worked with, but something was missing, right? Like, I'm giving back, like I'm fixing these machines, and that makes people happy, and I'm bringing fulfillment there, but I need something deeper. And I didn't know what it was. And I'm just driven. I just want to help people. I don't know how. I don't. So that kind of headspace shifts me into um, finding a marketing program that teaches me actually about personal development, ikigai. What is your purpose? What are your goals? Now I start seeing pieces of this puzzle, and I start getting these pictures and these ideas that lead me to a certified life coaching program. I'll be a life coach, right? That's a helpful space, and it was a great program. I've made some phenomenal connections with people that I still meet with. And that was like almost 2 years ago. I still meet with some of them like once a week. We have this OGs meeting, and it's just, so that kind of environment shifted me into this coaching mindset, instead of giving advice, fixing problems, like the client led part. But at the end of that program, and I'm starting to realize that there's something deeper inside of me, physiologically reacting and causing the inability for me to take action on things. Which anyway, at the end of the CLC course, the instructor literally tells us, we don't deal with trauma. Like, you can coach off of their certification, off of their platform, with all of their things, but they do not want you to help people with trauma. And I understand why, because if you start and you don't know what you're doing, and you activate somebody and you don't know how to co-regulate them, like, it can be, your intention can be to be helping, but your impact can be not good. So I understand why they said that. And then I stumbled into the association through one of my fellow students from the CLC course who had a coach who was in the association, which leads to this trauma lens, which leads me to where I am now. And like I say, I'm going to try to do my best just to button this up. the adolescent space is huge, and having the understanding of all the stuff that I went through and how it impacted me, and then getting this education and understanding the neuroscience behind it and why we physiologically feel like we can't do things, and those are trauma blocks, what's in the body, and just learning about all that, and then showing up in places now where I can try to help people reconcile that, right? Like, that's why we're here. This is the space that we help in. And not just the adolescents themselves. There's room for that with the parents, the teachers, the administrators. There's just a lot of different spaces where we can take this knowledge and this understanding, and helping people one-on-one it's very beneficial, but helping people in mass is how we spread this awareness, I guess. And I was really nervous about today, so I made sure I kept myself busy all day so I wouldn't be thinking about what I don't want to overthink and think about what I'm going to
Right.
say. So I say all that to say that now that I've kind of wrapped this up, I don't really have like a going out speech.
It's all right.
But I do want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to kind of share that, because the more we share it and the more we can connect with people and also let them know the things that we know, and the spaces where we are, where if you want access to this knowledge, if you want access to this understanding, like, you can reach out to us and we can put you in the right places to learn if that's where you're at, or
Right.
if you want to work with somebody, reach out to either one of us. And I do discovery calls, and with my discovery calls, it's not necessarily about creating a client. It's more like trying to understand where somebody's at. And if I don't feel like they're in my space, we just have amazing colleagues and an amazing ecosystem. And so just to be able to reach out and plug people in with people to find them help. And like I say, I didn't really come up with a wrap up speech. So I guess that's kind of where I'm at. So thank you for holding this space for me. I'm very grateful.
No, you are welcome. Thank you for being here. And so my husband's got it, but I just wanted to do you still have your chat off?
Oh, I will turn it back on.
It's all right. So my husband understands when you said, so he said the whole way of life changed for me when my dad took his own life too. And he actually talked about that on, we did a live with him. And so he kind of talked about that too. So he understands exactly what you're going through.
Yeah.
In that aspect as well. And
Thank
and then
you for sharing that.
So he said, I missed the beginning. So what is your specific line of helping others?
Specific line is, so I use the tagline growing unstuck. And what I mean by that, and it's actually my LLC and everything. And what I mean by that is helping people acknowledge. So part of my copy, part of my wording, if you read it, is about the physiological reaction to why can't I? Like, I want to make these changes. I want to change goals. I want to work on my business. I want to whatever. I want to be a better parent. I want to be a better whatever. But for me, when I was running into the blocks, it showed up in me like I physically felt like all you have to do is just this thing. Just do the thing. It's not hard, but like literally couldn't. That's the stuck piece. Well, I understand now. That's the autonomic nervous system reaction. That's overwhelm causing a freeze response. So specifically, if I could break it down, like, it's about helping people acknowledge that there's things that happened to them or didn't happen for them. Okay. Helping people accept that, yes, this is what happened. And then there's we have to stop blaming. Okay. It's not your fault. What happened to you is not your fault. Also, whoever perpetrated that, not to make excuses for anybody, but a lot of them are just running automatic programs. So acknowledge, accept, assimilate, take that into yourself and give yourself the credit for how far you are now, and the fact that it's not your fault. It's a part of you. You have to accept it. You have to assimilate that into who you are. And then there's like the ascension piece. So now let's not hang out here. Let's not just beat up and brood about all the terrible things. What do you want? And what can we work on to work you towards that? And how can we give you strategies for re-regulation, co-regulation, awareness around why you're not doing things, awareness of how it's showing up in your body, and then strategies to just carve these new neural pathways, right? To create the behaviors that can get you into not being reactionary, not being so anxious about something, not being shut down and frozen. And so I hope that answers the question.
Lori has a question, another question. She said, how do you celebrate yourself in your growth? And she just wanted to tell you that she's very proud of you.
Thank you, Lori. Lori is amazing. How do I celebrate myself? I'm getting better at just kind of owning where I am now and being confident and being able to help other people. And it's something that we have to grow into, because we're not used to giving to ourselves because of the whole thing that I just kind of went down. So how do I celebrate myself? I make sure I take time to do things that I want to do. Again, this kind of spills into the self-care thing.
Yes.
Because all the stuff that's happened to us, like, we can really ride that train and we can really identify with that and just really kind of punish ourselves, beat ourselves up, not give to ourselves. So spending time doing things that I want to do, like I say, the bikes, we do a lot of beach trips in the summertime, and being consciously intentional with the fact that I have come this far. I have done the work. I have gotten the education. I can connect with people. So yeah, just being consciously intentional around that, I think. Thank you, Lori.
That's a good one. I mean, it is. It's I'm sorry. I was trying to do something for us for the end. So yeah, it's important to celebrate yourself and to celebrate your growth. And a lot of people don't realize that. And I'm one of them that, sometimes I don't. But it goes back to looking at your progress, looking at your accomplishments. What are you doing to progress? And you should celebrate those victories.
Well, and being able to show up in spaces now to not just help clients individually, but like, I like being in the spaces where I'm able to collaborate with other coaches, with other healers. Like, I use the term ecosystem all the time, because I've gotten so much out of these exchanges and interactions in these cohorts with my fellow students, with fellow coaches, but I also want to be able to just give back to that. And it's like this give and take, like I say, ecosystem. So and celebrate the fact that we are in a good space to be able to, we've done enough healing now that we can help other people, because there's people who need this,
Absolutely. So, you look like am I froze? Oh, I guess we were froze for a minute. I was like, oh, that's great. So, do you have about another 10 minutes?
I do. I have time. I just wanted to honor the time of your stream.
Okay.
And really,
Nope.
like, there's so much more that I would like to share. And there's a lot of other pieces in between all of that.
Well, that just means that we'll have to have you back.
Oh yeah, no, but I've got time right now.
Okay. So I just want to kind of, again, I use the word transition to kind of transition out, because it was heavy. But what I want to transition to is, I'm going to put this on there of what, so Jeremiah and I are speaking in October, it's actually the second for me. It's a trauma and mental health summit, and it's going to be worldwide online. And so if you go to wearethevoice.org, there's loads of information on there. You can't buy tickets yet. The tickets will actually go on sale on Thursday. But we're working on all of that. But at least if you go there, you'll be able to have the information and things like that. So kind of want to amp it up a little bit and stuff. Tell us what you're doing at the conference.
I'm doing a self-care piece. So the breakout is going to be, it's kind of a two-part thing. Part of it is just kind of helping to educate a little bit on what self-care is and what it can look like as trauma survivors. Again, I think we touched on this a little. As trauma survivors, we don't give to ourselves.
Right.
We give to everybody else. we take care of everybody else. So part of it is kind of an educational piece, and then I have an assessment, and it's the assessment is longer than what I actually have time for, but I'm going to do a portion of a self-care assessment to try to help whoever comes build awareness around what does self-care look like for me. Am I doing anything to actually care for myself? And there's some other pieces too. So, and then within the workshop, I'm going to actually walk everybody through being able to kind of create their own self-care plan, and because it's different for everybody. So just taking some time to sit down and ask some questions and give people like some actionable strategies, things that they can take with them, so that when they go, they can start looking at different spaces in their life where, hey, you know, I should do this for myself. This is what I enjoy doing, or this makes me feel relaxed, or that kind of thing. So that's pretty much the gist of what I'll be doing.
Good. So just so everybody knows, as of right now, I was trying to cheat, look at my notes to see what I was doing, but to say what I was speaking, but I only have like one word for each one when I was actually doing the schedule. So I was trying to think of mine. So I'm actually doing 3, which I better get on the ball and start writing and start in May when I started doing it. I waited to the last minute. I was like, oh, this will be easy. Yeah, no, it was not. It's not. So I like that you're speaking on self-care, because after it's really going to be needed, obviously, during the conference, and some of the heavy topics that are going to be spoken and things like that and presented. I know my first topic, I believe, is transforming. I always get it wrong. It's transforming the mind with restructuring through a biblical lens. So that's my first one. There'll be prayer in that group. I'm bringing in a Christian aspect to that one. The second one is healing. I can't remember what it is because I literally just changed it, and I'm not going to look to see what it is because I can't remember what it is. But it will be using, bringing in, it's a workshop. So I'm assuming it's going to be like somatics. I can't remember because literally it just came to me and I started writing it down. But there's a lot of different things in that one too. And then I'm also a keynote speaker number 3. And so I'm keynote speaking. Gabby's in the chat. Gabby and I will be keynote speaking on overcoming childhood trauma with God. So again, that will be, there'll be prayer in that one as well when that one starts as well. And then in my workshop, there'll be prayer as well. So we have 3 keynote speakers. I think we're up to 27 breakout sessions and workshops. It's going to be a huge conference worldwide. So some of the greatest people that I've stood next to are going to be presenting with us. Again, Jeremiah and I, and among some other ones, Dr. J, she's amazing, a phenomenal woman. And she will be speaking. She's one of our keynote speakers. She's doing an IFS workshop, along with other certified coaches. We have a nurse practitioner that'll be speaking on hormones and mental health. So we have, like, I feel like we have every area of this conference, or not the conference, well, the conference covered, but a lot of topics. Yes, there's so many topics when it comes to trauma. But I think we're going to deliver so many different topics in a phenomenal way of presenting them in the way they need to be presented in a gentle atmosphere, and, you know, obviously a safe atmosphere as well. So yeah. I'm super excited for this as well, and things like that too. So I'm looking forward to it and things like that. So yeah. So does anybody else have any other questions or anything before we wrap things up?
I was going to try to jump into the chat and like thank everybody, because I see everybody, but it's like my YouTube isn't connected to this or anything. So
it's not.
I just want to thank everybody that came, and thank everybody for the support. It's awesome. I appreciate it.
Well, I am so glad that you came. And again, thank you so much for sharing, and
yeah, absolutely.
And really putting your, being vulnerable in that situation. And my heart goes out to you, as, for all of us, or for me anyway, one trauma survivor to another.
Thank you.
It's never easy. And I'm very proud of you for getting on here and sharing your story live. And I know that's why I knew your story was going to be hard, but it's very impactful, to see the transition. And that's why we do this,
Yeah.
It's to welcome people into the lives of a trauma survivor, because it's not easy being us. It's not easy going. It's like I tell people, we're a new person.
Yeah.
We have become a new person. And so, we're not who we used to be. And a lot of people don't understand that. So, and my goal is to get more men on here to share and things like that as well. So
I just
that'd
saw,
be great.
I think that's your husband actually
Yep,
talking
Fly
about
Talk, yep,
sharing your
Charles.
story. Most men will not, and you're right, because we're told not to. And Gina touched
Yeah.
on that. Boys don't cry and suck it up and all this stuff, which actually, when you're already experiencing trauma and then told to stuff it down, I think it kind of compounds that for a lot of us. And I'm actually I'm the Mid Michigan peer support group facilitator for a mental health peer support organization called Broken People. And they've been around for 6 years, but in my community, I'm actually in the process of securing a location right now to just provide free in-person mental health peer support for exactly what you're talking about. It's not just going to be for men, but again, being a man and stepping out into the community and trying to bring some awareness around this. And I feel like there's a shift happening, like collectively we're leaning towards this, and it's necessary. Like the whole planet needs healing. Right. So, but I wanted to acknowledge that you're absolutely right. As men, we are told not to, but it's critical. It really is. And if we want to be able to be the best fathers and husbands and whatever role you're trying to fill as a man, like just you have to be able to own all that stuff.
You do. And it's, yeah. So I forgot what I was just going to say. I hate when that happens to go, "Ooh, what, yeah, yeah. I don't remember, but anyway, yeah. So we really do need to. So he said, men are told to suck it up and be a man. And that's right. They are. But I agree. I mean, I always say that we're paving ways and we're going to be the change makers and cycle breakers, because this is what this is all about. The more men that see these types of things, the more hopefully they'll say, oh, that's like me. That's my story. It's okay. And so the why I chose We Are the Voice, I had to think of where I was going with this. Why I chose We Are the Voice. I know my mind's like, whoop. Why I chose We Are the Voice is exactly that. We are the voice for the voiceless. We are the voice for the trauma survivors that don't feel like they have a voice to speak up yet. And so with doing the conference and with doing this, I'm hoping it brings that hope and that inspiration and that empowerment for men and women to say, you know what, I can resonate with what they're saying. Maybe I can reach out to some, one of them or both of them, or, that convicted me in a way that, oh, maybe I did have trauma. Maybe I need to reach out to them to see what they can do to help me, because so many people sit and they have no idea that trauma even exists. And I'll say this, like when I got in, I don't want to make this about me, but I do want to say this because this is really important. But when I get into my healing journey, it was all a God thing. And I'll never stop sharing about God. So if you get sick of hearing me about God, then apparently this isn't the YouTube channel for you, because I'll share about that, because that was the biggest thing about me. And so when he brought me to the trauma recovery program, I was literally, I was a raging lunatic with triggers. And so I started in August. I'll never forget this, because something that just clicked in my mind last Monday was actually interesting. And I'll say this because I brought it up, but the same girl that brought my daughter and I, this is a hard thing for me too, because this girl was like a daughter to me, but the same girl that brought my daughter and I to Jesus in life brought us back to Jesus in 2021 at her death. And so I remember being in the trauma this is why I say this, because it's all in timing, but I say this for this. I was in the program for 3 months when this lady came up to me, had no idea who she was. She literally came up to me and put her hand on my shoulder as I was praising and worshiping at the front of this funeral. And she came up to me and she said these words, and it will forever change me and be embedded, that I realize that where we sit today, we're here for a reason. You and I, everybody else, we're here for a reason. We're doing this for a reason. Whether you believe in God or not, that's between you, him, whoever you believe in the universe. But this lady said this to me. And she said, God knows of your abuse from the age of 4. And he's given you the tools and resources that you need to let your guard down. But it's ultimately up to you to use those tools and resources to let your guard down so he can show you his love and he can use you to be the healer you were called to be. And when I tell you, I sobbed and I got goosebumps. I sobbed and sobbed. And I was like, yeah, I was like, there is no way. It was that I didn't even realize it, but there's a moment like that. And that was the moment that I didn't realize it in the moment, but that was the moment that God was telling me, I'm using your journey to help other people. But I just didn't know that at the time. It took 2 other people to prophesy that to me. So why I'm saying that is that despite, I don't want to say like or downplay any of the trauma we went through, but look where we are today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Look what we're doing today. And so I bring that up because I want to be that inspiration. I want to say, look, you know what? My healing was through God. God did bring me through this. Maybe that's not how somebody else got healing, and that's perfectly fine. But nonetheless, I want to be able to help people and educate them, bring healing strategies, so people understand that we're all one and the same. We've endured trauma, but let's help other people heal. Let's get out there and do so many things that we need to do. Lori said, wow, goosebumps. Yeah, it's my testimony and my story is powerful. You'll have to come to the conference because I will share it there, more of it there. But there's a lot, and I want people to know that that's why we do this week after week after week. That's why we do this, because I want people to get to a point that they understand. They, or maybe not understand, but identify that maybe they have endured something, and stuff like that too. So, and again, I would love to have more men, exactly because of the stigma surrounding what men go through. I would love to have more men on there. So I know you know a lot of people, so maybe you can connect me. Thank you, Deanna, as well. So
yeah, thank you.
She said, praise Jesus, pain to purpose. And that's exactly what it is. So, but yeah, so we'll definitely have to be on again. So
that experiential piece is critical. Like you can read and understand this stuff all you want, but being able to connect to it, I think that experiential piece is kind of what, like, we're all wounded healers.
Right.
And that's not something that you can just read your way into, I guess. So
no.
And yeah, I'd like to come back and focus a little more on the education part. And from this point forward, like, bringing some awareness to why I'm here is one thing, but just all the spaces where we can show up, and what does this look like moving forward, and how do we get into spaces to raise this awareness and the trauma. So before I got into this space, trauma to me was, and I believe this, like, people just don't understand what it is. It was, you've been to war, you've been in an accident, it was these major things, because it's what's out there and that's what the prevalent viewpoint is. But when you understand this and you start seeing the developmental pieces, the acute and the chronic, and again, not necessarily things that happen to you, things that maybe didn't happen for you, and how that affects the way we develop on like a neurological level. And
yes.
So yeah, I just feel like I'm talking in circles now.
You're all right.
So it was great. It was great being here, Gina. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you, everybody.
So we will, so next Monday, we will not have a live. We'll have a live the following Monday. I will be sitting on the ocean, on the shores of Massachusetts. I will be gone for 5 days to visit family, and to kind of see them. My daughter and I are flying out Thursday morning. So keep us in your prayers for safe travels, and on that journey that we go for 5 days as well. But we'll be back the following Monday, with another guest and things like that. And as always, like, share, subscribe. I always forget all those and all that lovely stuff because once this goes live on YouTube, I was going to say Facebook, but on YouTube, the chat will disappear. And this is because we have a new set of people here before we close. When the tickets go on sale, I'm going to give you a code. It will not be active right now, but this code, Jeremiah, you don't have to worry about this code because this is you don't have to worry about this code.
Nope.
But I'm not gonna say what the hashtag is. But anybody in the chat that buys a conference ticket, you will get $100 off. Yep. So that's just a thank you for being here. A thank you for supporting my YouTube. Week after week, there are some, newcomers here, this evening. But that's just, for everybody that has come and supported us one way or another. I just want to give back. And so that's our thank you to you for coming and just, kind of showing up and being there. But so we will see you guys in 2 weeks. Jeremiah, I cannot thank you enough for being here and really pouring out your heart and your soul and really being vulnerable and sharing your story with us. I thank you so much. And for everything, thank you to all of our guests, or not our guests, sorry. Thank you to all of our audience members. Yep. See, if I could just go back and edit, I'd be like, oh, yep, nope, take that. Nope, can't do that. So yeah. So thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful evening. And we will catch you in 2 weeks. Bye, guys.
Bye. Thank you.